Hello, I'm Charles Brock, and I'm a Highland Woodworker. Let's see what we have in store for you today. This time on the Highland Woodworker. Before he was president, Jimmy Carter was an avid woodworker. We explore his impressive furniture collection and hear how the craft helped shape his life. 3 generations of artistic woodturners. A first-hand look at how Philip and Matt carry on Ed Moulthrop's legacy in our Moment with a Master series. Popular Woodworking's Matthew Teague has a quick tip on creating beautiful bridal joints. Bert the Wood Expert shows us why white oak is A-OK. An inexpensive upgrade to your bandsaw could make all the difference. See how the wood slicer performs in our toolbox segment. Plus, a step-by-step look at how to make your masterpiece shine. All of this and more this time on the Highland Woodworker. The Highland Woodworker is brought to you by Highland Woodworking. Fine tools delivered to your door since 1978. This portion of the Highland Woodworker is brought to you by Whiteside Machine Company. Top quality, industrial grade, and American made. Rycon Power Tools, tools designed by woodworkers. And by Masterpiece Wood Finishes, helping you build beautiful furniture. I'm at Highland Woodworking in Atlanta, Georgia. This is like Disneyland for a woodworker. They've got all the tools and classes and a great staff to help you with your next project. Former President Jimmy Carter has been inspired by so many of the iconic woodworkers, like Tay Frid, for example, Ed Moulthrop, and Sam Maloof. First time I saw a Sam Maloof rocker just changed my entire woodworking journey. Well, President Carter recently invited us into his office at the Carter Center, and he showed us his beautiful collection of Sam Maloof furniture and told us about his woodworking journey. President Carter, it's so nice to...
It's good to be with you, and you know, Highland Hardware means a lot to me. I've known them ever since they began in business.
Yeah, Chris Bagby is just a wonderful guy, and I think one of the ideas about this show, the Highland Woodworker, is I'm a Highland Woodworker. You probably could say you're one too.
I am too, yes. I've been to classes there to learn how to be a better woodworker, and I've had a class there by Tay Frid. He also made a stool and gave it to me as a result of that. But I've learned a lot from them and use their literature, and I'm a regular customer of theirs.
Well, that's just great. You know, Sam Maloof was a part of Highland Woodworking.
Yes, I know.
Where did you meet Sam?
Well, when I was president, Sam Maloof made this chair for me, but I didn't accept any gifts that were worth more than $15. So he couldn't give it to me. So after I got back to Plains from the White House, Sam Maloof put this chair in the back of his station wagon and drove from near Los Angeles to Plains to deliver it to me in person. And I was just overwhelmed with gratitude, but also with excitement just to meet him, because I had read about him, you know, earlier in Fine Woodworking magazine and that sort of thing. So I knew that he was the best woodworker, I think, in the world. And to have him make a chair for me was just a wonderful experience.
Yes, it's almost a benchmark moment when you flipped through a magazine and you saw a piece of Sam's, you remembered it instantly.
And you can recognize when he makes something.
That's right. What is it about Sam's work that makes it so endearing, such a focus for woodworkers?
Well, you know, I know Sam well. We've spent hours and hours together at his place and in Plains, Georgia, and here in this office, and just talking to each other. And he's a Lebanese, was a Lebanese philosopher and a moralist and almost a theologian. And I think that Sam's inner spirit, what he meant on a moral basis, is evident in the kind of furniture he makes. There's a human aspect of it, and you can he makes it in such a special way with his own hands. And you can start on one of these curves, and you can go around the whole chair, and it comes back to where you started, which is just an additional thing with it. But this chair and this table and that two rocker and the special one that he made for me when I got the Nobel Peace Prize. All of these are treasures, you know, in my life. The most valuable piece I have is this piece right here, which I think is one of the most remarkable woodworking products that I've ever seen in my life. And I think there's one like this in the National Museum of Art as well. And he made this chair over here. We can walk over just a moment. To commemorate my getting the Nobel Peace Prize, and he wrote on the bottom of the chair, I've forgotten the kind of wood, but it's
Surcote?
I'm not sure. It's on the bottom of the chair. I won't look at that right now. But he brought this particularly to give to me on that occasion. So you see, he went out of his way to honor mine and his friendship.
Wow.
In fact, I've tried to do a few other things with woodworking. I've tried to do some wood turning in a very modest way. In fact, I made the collection plates for my church and things of that kind. And I went out with Ed Moulthrop a number of years ago after I read about him in fine woodworking. And this is by Ed Moulthrop. This is by his grandson, I believe, or his son. But I think that here again, I'm bragging about Georgia now because I think they're the finest wood turners that I've ever known. Well, woodworking has meant a lot to me. I started woodworking on a practical matter. I worked on a farm with my daddy, and I learned, you know, saws and hammers and things. I learned how to cut a rafter and how to build a hog sheds and things like that kind. And then when I was a Future Farm of America student, as a high school student, I learned how to make nicer things. In fact, strangely enough, I made a model of the White House. That was my high school project. I never dreamed about going into politics. I always wanted to be in the Navy.
How prophetic that ended up being, yes.
And I've made full-poster beds and cabinets and chairs. In fact, when we built a mountain cabin after I came from the White House, the year after I left the White House, I didn't travel much, so I made all the furniture for the entire house.
Wow. Shiffer
robes and beds and chairs and tables and everything in the house. And I like to use hand tools. My shop is completely furnished. I mean, I can't put another piece of you know, equipment, mechanical equipment in my shop. When I left the White House, my White House staff and my cabinet officers took up a collection to give me a going-away present. And they took up enough money to buy a Jeep. I found out about it, and I told them I don't want a Jeep. So then the word came back through my secretary, what do you want? And I said, I want to have a completely furnished wood shop. So they took the money that they had raised for a Jeep. At that time, it was only $7,500, and they gave it to Sears Roebuck and said, for Sears, you furnish President Carter's wood shop with everything he needs. So when I got home from the White House, there was a complete collection of everything you possibly could use in a wood shop. I've enjoyed it very much.
Hey, thank you so much, President Carter. I almost feel like I've grown up with you.
Well, you live next door almost.
That's right. And
in fact, when we go to and from Atlanta, we always go through Columbus. So
well, stop by my shop. I've got 2,500 square feet of studio, and it's filled up, just like every shop that any woodworker has. It's not enough room.
Well, if I ever need a piece of furniture, a piece of equipment I don't have, I'll come to Columbus.
All right.
Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
As we were packing up, President Carter came out of his office and said the low back chair was Surcote. Just a beautiful chair. We'd like to thank President Carter for being a part of the Highland Woodworker. Every workshop needs a way to mill some lumber. I mean, even mill it from a slab. And with a bandsaw and a wood slicer blade from Highland Woodworking, you can mill your own lumber. You can even mill your own veneer and book match it. You can cut 1/32 inch slices and glue them together on a form if you'd like, to make arches or whatever you'd like to make. You have that flexibility, and it all comes from probably a $30 upgrade of a wood slicer blade on your bandsaw. The wood slicer is going to cut with a very thin curve, and it's going to be almost vibration free for a bandsaw because of its variable tooth pitch design. You'll really love your wood slicer blade. You'll feel like you've increased the horsepower of your bandsaw, and it'll put a smile on your face every time. Coming up next on the Highland Woodworker, Bert the Wood Expert and the pros and cons of white oak. Then we're cutting up with Popular Woodworking's Matthew Teague. You're watching the Highland Woodworker.
Behind that garage door lies a kingdom, a place where all that's wrong and broken can be fixed. Armed with Gorilla Glue, imagination, and some elbow grease, there's nothing that can't be built, created, or repaired. Your kingdom awaits. Gorilla. For the toughest jobs on planet Earth, visit GorillaGlue.com.
Highland Woodworking has been a leader in woodworking education for over 30 years. They offer all kinds of woodworking classes year-round, ranging from how to hand-cut dovetails and mortises, to how to sharpen a plane or a chisel, how to build a cabinet, a chair, or a bookcase, or how to turn a wooden bowl. There are classes on wood finishing, French polishing, and even antique furniture restoration. For a list of upcoming classes that may interest you, go to highlandwoodworking.com. This portion of the Highland Woodworker is presented by Popular Woodworking Magazine, JDS, leaders in air filtration, dust collection, and woodworking machinery, and by Gorilla Glue for the toughest jobs on planet Earth. Highland Woodworkers are found all over the world. Email a picture of you and your woodworking project along with your name and where you live to picture@thehighlandwoodworker.com. I'm in the wood room at Highland Woodworking, and I'm considering using this wonderful piece of quarter sawn white oak for my next project. Let's go talk to Bert the Wood Expert at Peach State Lumber. He'll tell me all I need to know about this great American hardwood. I'm interested in doing a project in oak. Okay. And how do I know whether I want red oak or white oak, and how do I tell the difference?
Well, there's one old saying I was always taught to tell the difference between red oak and white oak is you can cut a little sliver and try to blow air through the end grain. It will pass through red oak but won't pass through white oak, and that's one of the difference. White oak has a closed pore system where red oak has an open pore system. But most people think the difference is just color, red oak being red, white oak being white, but that's not necessarily the case. White oak is more of a dark brown to an off gray, and that's primarily because almost 15 species of trees go in to make up white oak lumber. It's not just one species of tree.
So tell me about the drying for this white oak over here.
White oak is one of the most difficult domestic species to kiln dry. We are trying to reduce the moisture content of white oak to approximately 7%. And then of course wood is just like a sponge. It will collect moisture from the atmosphere. Might raise it to 7 to 10% is industry standards considered acceptable. One of the interesting facts about white oak, it has a tendency to react with iron. There's a tannic acid naturally found in white oak. It's completely harmless. It used to be used in tanning of leather, but one of the effects it has on the lumber is you can see everywhere the circular saw blade went through, it has left a black mark over time. Those will completely surface out when we surface the lumber. Those are not considered defects. It's actually a characteristic of white oak in the rough.
Well, Bert, this white oak board looks very different from that one. This one is just very straight and plain, and this one has these little flakes or fish scales. Tell me about those.
Those are actually medullary rays. A lot of people refer to them as just wood flake, fleck. Some people also call it tiger striping in oak. What that is the way it's cut. If you look on the end of that board, the growth rings are running 60 to 90 degrees, almost straight up and down. It produces a very straight grain board, and it also allows for the viewing of those rays, which are present in all oak boards for that matter. And the other one, of course, is a plain sawn, where the growth rings are going more in a semicircle pattern around the end. One of the benefits of quarter sawn versus plain sawn is quarter sawn does not shrink width-wise as much as plain sawn. Wood movement is mostly limited to the thickness of the board. It's just the opposite of a plain sawn. White oak have some standard defects that are found in all lumber, one being knots, splits, wane, and checking. There's one thing white oak is prone to, and that's honeycombing during the drying process. And that's small checks form in the interior of the board. They're very difficult to detect till the board has been surfaced or sanded, and then you can't get rid of them. The more you surface them, the more they come. It is a defect. It's very tough to catch it until the board has been milled.
Well, thank you so much, Bert.
It's been a real pleasure.
I'm in the shop of Popular Woodworking's editor, Matthew Teague. Matthew, I love the visible joinery here in your cabinet. You want to tell us about it and maybe show us how to make it?
Sure. Yeah, this is one of my favorite joints to cut. It's a bridal joint, sometimes called an open mortise and tenon. It's a nice exposed joint. Very easy to cut, very strong. It's a lot quicker than a mortise and tenon joint, and I love the exposed joinery there. I just like to be able to look at a piece of furniture and know exactly how it's engineered. Start off with a tall auxiliary fence on the table saw. This one's a little bulkier than it even needs to be, but just a simple tenoning jig. Really just a scrap of plywood with a right angle fence screwed to the back of it. You want to make sure your screws are out of the way of the blade. I've already marked out, this is about 3/4 of an inch wide, and I've marked out where I want the center open mortise to be. So what I want to do is come in here and align that blade right on that line. You can take the piece that it's mating to, raise the blade just to that height. I'll take one pass, flip it around, take a pass on the other side. So I'm using an alternate bevel blade here. It's going to give you a little bit of a rough cut there. You can clean that up with a chisel. But the next thing you want to do is cut your mating piece. And you're going to cut the cheeks of the tenon. So you want to align this using that same piece you just cut. Align the blade just with the edge of your mortise. And then cut the mating piece. And we'll do it. These happen to be the same width of material. But if it was different, you'd just alter that height.
Show me how you cut your shoulders.
Oh, it's pretty easy. Just a basic miter gauge, and I've set up the blade to cut, used a registration block set up to cut the width of my open mortise there. I'll align the workpiece against it. Make sure I'm not going to cut into the tenon itself, but just right to that height. Flush it up to the registration block and take a pass. So now is the moment of truth with this joint to see if it fits.
right.
If it doesn't, it's a little fat, you can still go back in, take another pass. It looks like it goes together pretty snug though. You want a little hand pressure to have to force it together just like a regular mortise and tenon joint.
That looks great. And then up here on this piece, all you had to do is put a little bit of wax or finish on it, and that end grain just pops right out.
Well, that's exactly what I like about it. It's a nice exposed joint. As I said earlier, you can tell at a glance exactly how this piece was built. On top of that, it's really easy to build. When you put the finish on, just like you said, it really pops.
Coming up next on the Highland Woodworker, they just might be the most talked about artistic woodturners of our time. Meet Philip and Matt Moulthrop in our Moment with a Master. You're watching the Highland Woodworker.
Skill building workshops, aisles of incredible tools, and the chance to talk shop with top woodworkers. It's all yours at Woodworking in America, the country's premier woodworking events. This year you can join us in Cincinnati or Pasadena for one of these unforgettable shows. Each features workshops with experts like Roy Underhill, Frank Klaus, David Marks, and dozens of other top woodworkers. Plus, you'll find a marketplace where more than 50 exhibitors offer hands-on exposure to the latest tools. Reserve your spot today at woodworkinginamerica.com.
If you can't make it to Atlanta, then you can always shop us on the web at www.highlandwoodworking.com. Our Moment with the Master series takes us to Marietta, Georgia, where we visit with the Moulthrops, the first family of artistic American wood turning.
Well, as you can see, we have quite a collection here. These are pieces that I've turned, but these are all made out of southern woods, and there's quite a range of variety. We are always looking for woods that grow in the area that have unique colors or patterns to them. And as you can see, we like, one of our favorites here is box elder or ash leaf maple because it can contain this bright red color. We've got here a piece of hackberry. As you can see, this one has developed these patterns in here, a very dark silvery gray against the really light color here, so that this contrast provides a lot of interest.
The Moulthrops are comprised of 3 generations of artistic wood turners. In the mid-1900s, the late Ed Moulthrop took wood turning to a whole new level.
Of course, as you know, he was an architect, and that was his main source of income at the time. And if this was probably late 50s, early 60s, the market for kind of fine crafts, there wasn't a lot of that. And so he was making these small pieces, and he started selling them in the Signature Shop, or which is now called Signature Gallery, in Atlanta. But you know, these were $10, $20 each, you know, so there wasn't a lot. But you know, I think he eventually sold one for $100 or $200, and he's like thrilled.
Tell us about Ed, because from your perspective, I know he was an excellent architect.
He was that.
But tell us about you.
Well, I just remember how nice he was. When I had read about him 2 or 3 times and seen the remarkable nature of his wood and found out he didn't live far from Atlanta, I called him on the phone, told him who I was, and told him I'd like to come out and see his operation. So he showed me how he turned the wood. And of course, he gets it down to a pretty smooth state just with the chisel. And then he did a lot of just remarkable, kept on sanding and with steel wool and so forth. And the remarkable thing is how he does it on the inside as well. So I think that these pieces that he has done and his children, son and grandson have done is just extraordinary.
When I first started, you know, I thought, well, should I try to do this as a living, look at it that way or not? And then at just about the exact same time, I had just passed the bar exam, and I thought, well, should I be a lawyer? You know, and I said, well, you know, I shouldn't worry about that. I should just keep doing it. And then the one I liked the best was start leaning in that direction. Probably after about a year and a half, the local gallery in Atlanta wanted to have a show because she'd worked with my father, and he said, well, it's time to bring Philip in on this. So we did a show, and we sold really well. I thought, well, this is really good, you know. There were a couple people who called me up and say, you know, do I have anything for sale? And then, so I was able to sell a few pieces on the side, too.
When it came to turning big bowls, Ed and his son Philip had to do a little digging to develop their signature tools.
So he found a salvage yard that sold, you know, all sorts of salvage things, but one of the things they had was some cast-off tools and things from Lockheed and all, and they had these tap and die sets where actually they can turn screw threads probably in the airplanes they were making over there, but these were not like little ones like these were things like this long, and the steel was like ultra tempered steel. So he got these things and mounted them in there and would put them on an anvil and put in heat in the forge and then pound them out on an anvil and get the tool points that he wanted and sharpen them off of that. And of course, that was a lot heftier type of tool. After using those for years, we finally found a foundry that would actually make our tool points into the hardness that we wanted to. So we have made tool points that we can actually interchange with our handles, so things go, it's faster, it's more efficient.
Philip's son Matt grew into wood turning. In fact, he was selected to be a part of the Smithsonian's prestigious 40 Under 40 exhibit, making his the third generation of Moulthrop work on display.
I did have 2 masters in a sense, teaching me without any secrecy. You know, everything was open for me to learn and ask questions. But at a certain point, there's an innate ability that you have to have in order to, I guess, perform or create on that level. We can work with any species of wood, and we get them, we just store them outdoors to the natural elements.
Here's a piece of box elder or ash leaf maple, and it has this really nice red pattern. It's found in certain trees, so we found this one, and we're going to turn this. So what I've kind of expedited here, but when you cut it off,
Look at that color.
you cut off enough of the white because I don't really need all that white on there, and it leaves it right here. You can see the color go down the side.
Wow.
Of course, now this red that you see here won't just stick out here. It'll be going over the side like that. So now it's ready to mount up. Walk with me over here, you'll see. As you can see, the screw threads here match the screw threads on the bottom of this plate here. So it's on there.
And just threads on.
Just threads on.
The first thing Philip does is rough out his bowl on an exact replica of his father's heavy-duty lathe. A major difference in the way the Moulthrops turn is by using a movable fulcrum pin in the tool rest. This allows them to get leverage as they shape the bowl.
The other thing that you'll notice is that our tools are longer than most people use. And one of the reasons is because we'll reach farther rather than keep moving the tool rest close, so we can be like within an inch or so. We'll reach pretty far. You can see we've already gotten a couple inches in.
Sure.
And I just keep making passes until I get to the bottom of where I drilled. And I won't just have a hole going this way, it'll actually fan out. Right. But I'll still have it really thick up here. And after I get all the way to the bottom, I'll take this pin and I'll move it over 1 notch, and it allows me to get up farther that way. And the more I move it up here, the farther I can get.
Out further.
Swing further and further to get all the way up here. And so I'll just continue to do that until it's done. I'm going to let you hold this for a second. Let's get this lid off of here. And here is the tank. It's full of water mixed with some of the little polyethylene glycol, so it's, and you see, well, it's real brown, but the brown comes from the tannic acid in the wood. You know, the wood just turns it brown over time.
Sure. Now, how long will it have to stay in here?
All right, this one's starting in, on this date here, 3/23, so I would say probably this is a soft wood. The weather's getting warmer, that makes a difference. I'd say 4 weeks, 5 weeks might do it. It's already here less than 4. So all I do is just try to get it submerged enough that,
letting it fill up.
and then that's good enough. It'll float. And it
So
just
you wouldn't
stays in
say
there.
this is a good way to bob for apples?
No, not for apples. Not for apples. But I cover it because you don't want rain or people falling into it.
There you go.
But this is the next stop on the tour.
All right.
And
It's the closet.
well, it is a closet, but it's a drying area For the bowls that just got removed from the tank, they go in here and sit on the shelves, and I've got a dehumidifier that runs day and night, and it will slowly dry all this wood out. But the pieces that come from the tank and put into this room here, they'll stay in here maybe 2 to 3 months. Come on in, this is my storage rooms, where bowls are stored that have been, these bowls obviously have been rough turned, they've been cured, they've been dried, and they're now just storing here till I'm ready to finish them.
Another pass gives the final shape of the bowl inside and out.
If you can probably tell, we didn't make near the cuts on this piece as we did over there when we were roughing out the bowl. You're just barely taking off just very top layer is all you're doing.
Then it becomes a sanding situation. Philip uses a schedule starting with 40 and ending with 100 grit.
Oh yeah.
Got a few marks on there, but that's 80, so
Yeah.
but that's a whole lot smoother.
Yeah, that's really coming
And I'd
along.
probably go up to 100. Once I got 100 and there's, looking to be sure there's no marks that actually got too deep, then I'll coat it.
After applying the family's secret finish, these magnificent bowls are ready to be displayed in homes and galleries all over the world.
They've been painting on cave walls for 1,000 years, and the painting industry is very established. And so what we do is new, and I don't think there are really rules. I don't think there's nothing set yet. So I think there's a lot that's still to be accomplished.
Still ahead on the Highland Woodworker, applying finish can get tricky. We'll uncover the secret to the shine. You're watching the Highland Woodworker.
Rikon Power Tools. Tools designed by woodworkers.
Improve your woodworking experience. Sign up for Wood News Online, a monthly newsletter showcasing the latest news, tips, and classes Highland Woodworking has to offer. By signing up, you'll receive the latest episode of the Highland Woodworker, special store promotions, and Wood News Online delivered straight to your inbox. Sign up today. This portion of the Highland Woodworker is presented by Forest Manufacturing, saw blades for smooth, quiet, precise cuts, guaranteed. And by Peach State Lumber Products, your source for high-grade hardwoods. When you build your masterpiece, use a finish that will protect it for generations and let the beautiful color of the wood shine through. That's why I helped develop Masterpiece Wood Finish. Let me show you how I use it in my shop. This is the base coat. It's a mixture of China oils that penetrate very deep into the surface of the wood, just drinks into the pores. I like to use 2 coats, one every 24 hours. And after about 30 minutes, I'll wipe some of the excess off. And as you see, it does a beautiful job of bringing out the color in that wood. Don't get in a hurry with your finishing. Let each of the base coats dry for 24 hours. And then you're ready for the mid coat. The mid coat is a combination of the China oils and beeswax. I like to put it in the microwave for like 2 bursts of 10 seconds apiece. And then stir it up real good to get the consistency of a heavy cream. And I'm just going to rub this in real good. You don't have to use a lot, but you have to use enough. So just cover the surface really good. After 30 minutes, you're just going to wipe off the excess. In doing this, you're providing the surface with more air and the mid coat with a better chance to cure. Let it cure for 24 hours. Then you can put on the second coat and let it cure for another 24 hours. After the base coat and the mid coat are completely dry, and that's the key thing, then you're ready to apply the top coat. Just like the mid coat, the top coat can be placed in the microwave to smooth it out so it'll flow on just right. About 20 seconds is the most I ever do. Put a little bit on and rub it in. Now I usually do 2 coats. Just cover it good and then let it dry. So now I'm ready to take a white pad, white Scotch-Brite pad, and I just want to buff it out real good. This is easy. I help create masterpiece wood finish, not only for your masterpiece, but for mine. Thank you so much for watching the show. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And until next time, I'm Charles Brock, and I'm a Highland Woodworker. The Highland Woodworker is brought to you by Highland Woodworking. Fine tools delivered to your door since 1978. And these fine sponsors: Forest Manufacturing, saw blades for smooth, quiet, precise cuts, guaranteed. Whiteside Machine Company, top quality, industrial grade, American made. Masterpiece Wood Finishes, helping you build beautiful furniture. Peach State Lumber Products, your source for high-grade hardwoods. JDS, leaders in air filtration, dust collection, and woodworking machinery. Rycon Power Tools, tools designed by woodworkers. Gorilla Glue, for the toughest jobs on planet Earth. And by Popular Woodworking Magazine.